Hi crafty friends, working in my Prompt.Create.Repeat book. If you don't know, this is a book that I have created and that sells on Amazon. If you haven't seen this book before, it is a book with 50 prompts, and the prompts appear on the left page, and then on the right the page is blank for you to interpret that prompt any way you like. I've already completed 2 pages. Today I'm going to work with the prompt contrast. If you're interested in purchasing one of my books, I will put a link in the description box below. They are meant to be a no-stress place to experiment and do like warm-ups if you've maybe lost your mojo, or if you only have 5 or 10 minutes to spare in a day, you can whip up a page quickly. And with 50 prompts, the ideas are endless. And it can always be like a reference book that you can always go back to if you've tried different techniques. And I will be creating videos for all the pages that I make, and I will be sharing those with you. I'm going to start by sticking down a few pieces of collage paper. So just to note, the paper that this book is made from is only 90 GSM, which is not very thick. I've chosen this specific paper to be able to make this book more cost effective, so I don't have to charge you a lot. So hopefully you'll be able to purchase it if you want one. But just because the paper is not very thick, it doesn't mean that we can't do anything and everything on it. All we need to do is reinforce it and make it thicker to be able to hold things like paint or ink. For today's page, I am reinforcing it with collage papers. As you can see, I'm adding those on with Mod Podge. I'm using different neutral tones with print on. This will add an additional layer as I'm going to be adding paint onto my page. Now, you don't have to add this in pieces. You could add just one solid piece if you like. I just wanted a few different variations. You could also add just plain paper if you prefer. Now, you'll notice I'm also adding the Mod Podge over each collage piece, and that is to waterproof it and to allow it to be able to hold the paint. If I don't, the paint will just seep into the papers and make them soggy, and they'll possibly tear. Once I've done that, I'm going to dry everything and then trim off the excess. For the gaps in between the collage papers, I'm going to add one of my favorite things, and that is masking tape. So I'm going to fill all those white gaps with the masking tape, just in any direction. And although you can't see much once you cover this with gesso, it leaves a beautiful texture and just adds dimension and interest to your background. I'm also adding one long strip down the spine section. This is just to prevent any of the watery paint sort of seeping into the spine and making the entire book soggy. People often ask, why do you put all this fancy collage paper if you're going to cover everything up? I actually created a video quite a few years ago explaining why I do this. And I'm sure that question would probably come up again today, because I've done all of this beautiful collage background and most of it will get covered up with the gesso, as you'll soon see. But what I say is this is a starting point. This is sort of how you start your page, and then it takes you from one step to the next. And also some of it does shine through. We're not covering the whole thing in white. We're doing a thin layer of the gesso. In some areas thin, some areas a bit thicker, and you can still see the text shining through. And that is the part that I like and why I do these steps. So going in with a wide flat paintbrush and the white gesso, I'm covering most of the background. Like I said earlier, I am concentrating some areas to make them a little bit more thick so that they are whiter, and some others I'm leaving a little more transparent so you can see more of that collage paper. We're not looking for perfection here because we are going to be putting layers on top of this. This is all still part of the background. Now that my background is done, I'm going to go in with a stencil and some texture paste. Using a wide palette knife, I'm just going to do the texture paste through the stencil at the top section and near the bottom. I'm not going to cover the entire page. Of course, you can if you want to, but I want just a couple of sections of the page with the stencil. Again, we don't need perfection here, and especially when I pull this off and my gesso underneath wasn't quite dry. So some of that lifted off a little bit, you can see there, but that's also okay because you can see the collage paper from underneath in that neutral tone, and it can all just be part of the final design. Not everything has to be a disaster. We can work with mistakes. Going to dry my texture paste really well. I'm not going to make the same mistake as I did with the gesso, because now we're going to do the next step, which is adding the color. I'm going to go with the colors blue, and I'm going to use watercolors today. You could also do the same technique with watered down acrylic paint or even inks. You will also need a spray bottle with some water for this. We're going to use a very wet paintbrush, and we're going to add some watercolor to it and then dab it onto the area where the texture paste is. We're then going to spray with water, and we're going to move the page around to allow that liquid to flow in between the grooves of the texture paste design. And the way we have the dark and light of the paint in between the texture paste, where the lower end or the grooves of the design are darker and the actual raised bits are lighter, I see that as contrast, and that is how I have interpreted this prompt. I'm using a few different shades of blue, and I'm going to use this beautiful blue butterfly as a focal point. So I'm just going to cut it out so I can just see that I've got all the tones of blue that are within the butterfly are also on my page. This butterfly is from Making and Creating. I will put a link to their website in the description box below. Just look at that contrast. This is one of my favorite techniques to do. It's a good idea to dry in between the color applications, just it helps build that color up. And normally I will always start with the lightest color first and work towards the darkest. So I've used a few different shades of blue just to pick up those different blues in the butterfly wings. Look at all these beautiful tones, textures, and the beautiful contrast between the white and the blue. I love the way this looks. My butterfly, which is my focal point, will go here, and then I feel it needs something just at the bottom left of the butterfly. Otherwise, to me, the page feels a little unfinished. So using a piece of white tissue paper and a gel pen, I've just handwritten a little sentiment, and then I'm going to stick that down. And the reason I've used the tissue paper is so that it can be sort of transparent, so it actually looks like I have written directly onto the page. Once I glue that down with Mod Podge, you won't be able to see the tissue paper, but I also couldn't handwrite directly on. I've got so much gesso and texture paste, the pen writing will be all wonky. So I found a way of doing it so it looks like it's written directly on the page, but actually it's a little bit of a cheat, and I think it works great. And then I'm going to stick down my butterfly too. Again, using Mod Podge here, I need quite a lot of glue to make sure everything sticks down onto all those layers. I'm very happy the way this turned out. This is my interpretation of the prompt contrast. I'm now also going to date this page. I use my date stamp. This idea was given to me by somebody who watched one of the first videos of this Prompt.Create.Repeat, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and that you were inspired to create your own and to work from prompts. Just a reminder, these books are available from Amazon and the link is in the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and then hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Thanks again for watching. Happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.